I'm Susan. As I sit in my office, with the gentle patter of rain against the window and the blueprint of a school cafeteria spread out before me, I'm reminded of that fateful Thanksgiving a year ago. It was a night that changed everything, turning a family gathering into a battle for justice and safety. The mediation room was filled with a tense silence. The walls were a dull beige, and the glass doors seemed to trap the weight of the moment. I sat across from my brother, Jake, his face pale and his eyes filled with a mix of anger and fear. My parents, Robert and Linda, sat beside him, their expressions a blend of worry and disappointment. Tessa, Jake's fiancée, sat near the door, her engagement ring turned inward, a silent symbol of the broken trust. The mediator began to speak, her voice a monotone drone about privacy and resolution. But Jake interrupted, his voice thick with false remorse. "I want to say I'm sorry," he said, his eyes fixed on me. "I never meant for anyone to get hurt. It was just a family joke." I felt a surge of anger rise within me. "A joke?" I said, my voice cold. "You turned my allergy into entertainment, and a child almost paid the price." Carla, my attorney, opened her folder and began to lay out the evidence. Photos of the bowl of crab soup, the bread on the floor, and the paramedics treating little Lily, the young girl who had suffered an allergic reaction. Statements from Lily's mother, Sarah, and our neighbor, Mrs. Thompson, a retired nurse who had been at the dinner. As Carla presented the evidence, Jake's face grew paler. He tried to interrupt, to dismiss the facts as out of context, but his words fell flat. The video from the security camera in my parents' kitchen was the final nail in the coffin. It showed Jake standing beside Aunt Helen, grinning as he lifted the lid on the crab bisque. "Perfect," he said, "Susan is going to lose her mind." The room fell silent as the video played. Jake's eyes were fixed on the screen, his expression a mix of shock and realization. He had thought he could get away with it, that his actions were just a harmless prank. But now, the truth was laid bare for everyone to see. Carla presented the settlement demand, $720,000. $250,000 for Lily's medical and therapy trust, $220,000 for my emotional distress, lost income and safety damages, and $250,000 in punitive civil settlement to avoid public litigation and possible criminal referral. Jake laughed, but it was a hollow sound. "I don't have that kind of money," he said. Carla looked at him, her eyes cold. "Then litigation will be more expensive," she said. My father leaned forward, his face red with anger. "You're asking us to bankrupt ourselves," he said. I looked at him, my eyes steady. "No," I said, "Jake did that when he gambled a child's life on a punchline." The negotiation lasted for hours. Jake raged, my father argued, and my mother begged. But in the end, the evidence was too strong. Jake agreed to the settlement, with my parents as guarantors. The agreement included a no-contact clause and a written acknowledgement that the incident involved deliberate exposure to a known allergen risk. As Jake signed the papers, his hand shook. He looked at me, his eyes filled with hatred. "Are you happy now?" he asked. I stood up, my folder in hand. "No," I said, "I'm safe now." "There's a difference." The months that followed were a blur of change. Jake lost his job as a sales director for a high-end kitchen equipment company. His reputation was in tatters, and no one wanted to do business with someone tied to a deliberate allergen incident. He was forced to sell his expensive watch, his leased SUV, and his golf membership. He moved into a small apartment near a freeway, his life a far cry from the one he had once known. My parents were also affected. They took out a home equity loan to pay the first settlement installment, and the strain on their marriage was palpable. My mother tried to reach out to me, to make me see that Jake was still my brother, but I couldn't forgive him. I had spent too many years being the one to absorb his cruelty, to make excuses for his behavior. But this time, I refused to be silent. Aunt Helen's home catering business also suffered. After people learned that she had brought the crab bisque to the dinner, knowing that I had a shellfish allergy, her bookings dried up. She tried to apologize, to say that she didn't know Jake would take it that far, but it was too late. The damage had been done. Lily, on the other hand, was slowly recovering. She started therapy to deal with the trauma of the allergic reaction, and she had become more cautious around food. Her mother, Sarah, was grateful for my actions, for standing up for her daughter and making sure that justice was served. As for me, I used part of the settlement to launch Safe Table Design, a consulting studio focused on allergy-safe food spaces for schools, restaurants, and family event venues. I designed kitchen traffic plans to prevent cross-contamination, helped cafeterias create color-coded serving tools, and trained staff to take allergies seriously. My business grew faster than I expected, and I was proud to be making a difference in the lives of others. But the road to recovery was not easy. There were days when I would wake up in the middle of the night, my heart pounding, as I remembered Lily's gasping for air. There were times when I would see a bowl of soup and feel a pang of fear. But I refused to let the past define me. I was determined to use my experience to create a safer world for everyone. Looking back on that Thanksgiving, I realized that it was a turning point in my life. It was a moment when I finally stood up for myself, when I refused to be a victim. It was a moment when I learned that sometimes, the only way to stop the damage from spreading is to hold those responsible accountable. And as I look out at the rain, I know that the future is bright. I have a company that I'm proud of, a voice that I'm not afraid to use, and a life where no one gets to decide my safety is inconvenient. I may not have the family that I once had, but I have something better, a sense of peace and a commitment to making a difference.